I'm Ron Sharp. I am running for Senate District 17 for the state of Oklahoma. A group of my students that I had several years ago wanted to get together and discuss some of the issues of which is of their mind. I taught for 38 years at Shawnee Public Schools, had lots of students, and we're here today of which to allow them, of which to ask me some questions. They said they wanted to, so here I am, of which to ask a whole series of questions of which they have.
So one of the things, I just moved back. I was in Denver, I was also in Houston, I was in Seattle, I was in Rochester. Most recently, when I came from Denver, I should say, is that I noticed a lot of homelessness. Of course, there's a lot of marijuana dispensaries there, but when I got back to Oklahoma, to Shawnee, I was quite surprised at the level of homelessness here in my hometown of Shawnee. There's 713,000 in Denver and 31,000 in Shawnee, and yet the amount of homelessness here was surprising. The amount of dispensaries here is very surprising, and I'm seeing patterns similar here in my hometown that I saw in Denver, in Seattle. And I'm just wondering, what is it we can do as Oklahomans to sort of get back to our roots of who we are and not be similar to those bigger cities with all of the horrendous amount of homelessness that we see, and people just, waste it on drugs. It doesn't feel like Oklahoma anymore.
Well, and we have passed legislation here through referendum of which to make most of your drug-related acts here in Oklahoma as misdemeanors. Now, we did that because our prisons were absolutely full. Whether you're talking about Lexington or you're talking about McAllister or Mabel Bassett, they were full to capacity, and we had to, as a state of Oklahoma, address that issue. A prison costs millions of which to build and to maintain. And of course, they have all kinds of mental health issues and drug addiction and so forth that has to be addressed. And remember, you're not making any money when you put somebody in prison. You are spending every dollar. Oklahoma, it was somewhere about $74 a day of which your county jails were getting. To put someone in McAllister is about $105 a day, somewhere like that, which to give them 3 meals, give them their haircuts, everything else that you have to do in order to keep them alive. And so the state of Oklahoma passed several referendums of which to make most of these crimes misdemeanors, because they're saying, why do we want to put first-time marijuana users? Why do we want to put individuals for first time they've ever stolen something? Why do we want to put them in jail? Maybe we can provide counseling services and so forth to help them. A noble cause, but it is now made it to the point that our law enforcement agencies just do not want to spend all day booking somebody for a misdemeanor and they're out 5 minutes later. And that creates a problem. Are we going to have to strengthen our laws to put them back onto putting these individuals in jail? But remember, this is a cost. The state of Oklahoma's population has went up from about 2.9 to 3.2 million up to well over 4 million. That is why our prisons were filled, is the fact that we just increased population so fast due to the fact that everyone wants to come back to Oklahoma because they can afford a home. The cost of Colorado, trying to buy a home up there 3 times, 4 times the amount of what it costs here in Oklahoma. California up there 10 times as to what it costs. So they're all wanting to come. Florida, of course, is another state. Beautiful environment there for weather, but they're ready to come back to windy Oklahoma to be able to afford a home. And that's difficult enough, as I said, just to afford a home here in Oklahoma. So the homeless is a problem in the fact that if you arrest them, you're going to have to arrest them for vagrancy or whatever that you're arresting them for. The federal courts have said that once they're placed into any kind of jail environment, if they have a mental health issue, if they have teeth that need to be replaced, if they need vision, the state of Oklahoma has to pay for them. So that's why that no one wants to arrest an individual who is homeless. Did the COVID pandemic create this? It was already problematic enough for most of us here in Oklahoma just to handle the COVID. We were wearing masks. We were afraid to go out and buy things. It was a mental health strain on everyone. Did that trigger those that were already having marital problems, military engagements of which they might have killed someone? I mean, we have a lot of veterans who are homeless today, and what caused that? We don't know, because we don't have the counseling of which to really find out. So, and that's going to cost Oklahoma millions of which to address the issues. I do not know any other cause for the amount of homelessness that we have other than the pandemic. Before the pandemic, I did not see this level of homelessness. Were they always there? We just didn't see them. That's another question of which we're going to have to look at, statistics to find out what has caused this. But this is a major problem. Shawnee, Oklahoma was one town that was picked to be one of the worst cities to be homeless in. I mean, this was 20 years ago. It came out in all the newspapers that we mistreated the homeless. Well, we created a community market. Our churches went to work, and we tried to improve our image. Well, when you're from Tecumseh, from Meeker, from McLeod, that do not provide any of these services, are some of these city officials that are arresting the law enforcement in McLeod, Meeker, Dale, are they moving them here to Shawnee, Oklahoma to be taken care of? Probably. And that creates a problem. So when you start helping someone, you get into problems. One of the things they tell you when you go to a national park is don't feed the bears.
Yes.
Well, that is a reason why you tell them don't feed the bears, because you do not want them to become dependent and start coming up on campers and things like that, of which to try to steal whatever their basket is. So it is a question of what to do. We are in a different world than what we were just 20 years ago. Technology is just on the rise. Accordingly to some experts, that some 80% of the jobs that's going to be available by 2035, 2045 have not yet been invented. That's a scary thought. 80% of the job that's going to be available just within the next 10 to 20 years have not yet been invented. How do we prepare these kids that are in our public schools today for that unknown future? All we can do today is try to teach them add, subtract, multiply, divide, how to construct a sentence, how to live in a future of which they're going to have to be trained for this new job of which is being created. So we have state chambers, we have everyone else out there that's saying we want to create this kid that's ready for the future. It can't be done. Not under the circumstances. You can't even get a cell phone that is not obsolete within 3 months after you buy it. So how do we prepare these kids for the future? That's why we just need to concentrate on the basics. I'm not even certain as to whether we need to be forcing kids of which to take algebra, because many of our kids today, the male mind we know is not even fully developed until they're 25. That's the current research. And they just cannot grasp it. And so we're trying to force them to accept something that they just cannot grasp. So if you can teach them how to count change, how to take care of a checkbook, again, multiply, add, and subtract, that's what Europe concentrates on. They don't concentrate on the algebra. You offer those courses. We always need to offer algebra. We always need to offer physics and chemistry and all the different math programs out there available. But do we need to make that requirement for every kid to graduate from Shawnee Public Schools? Because I guarantee you, males are going to flunk it. Their brains are just not ready yet, guys. I mean, So why are we going to create a situation where all the data tells us that the male mind is just not capable of focusing on? And of course you have John Piaget, who comes up with all the stages of development, and most indications right now is that many of the individuals do not ever go into the abstract. They stay within the concrete operational, and yet there are doctors, there are lawyers, but they become so trained in their profession that they are excellent in their profession, but they do not have abstract skills of which to do it. So algebra is trying to get us into this abstraction, and we really just don't have it. And we need to, in my opinion, just focus on the basic add, subtract, multiply, divide, have it every year, make it problems of which these kids are having success. Oh my goodness, I know what 2 plus 2 is. I know what 3 minus 0 is. Now, one of my famous jokes that some of y'all might have heard is there's only 3 things I know about math: those who can count and those who can't.
Yeah.
So,
So basically what you're saying is, if we teach children basic life skills that might improve later on, so we don't have so many homeless because of lack of knowledge of how to live. I mean,
Yeah.
we've tried to teach them things they don't need at that point in time. Maybe that's part of it.
I think if one of the education reforms I think that would help is to have school basically 11 months a year. You go from 8 o'clock to 12:30. And school's out at 12:30. For those kids who want to stay on campus and eat, you don't run your buses till 1:30. But for those kids that have access to going home, you go home. But you basically get off the month of July, full month. You start back in August. You still have a fall break. You still have probably 2 to 3 weeks for Christmas. You still have a week off for spring break.
So they live like a college
But
student.
you basically are going year round for the education. That's what Europe primarily does. And now, will this increase cost? Yes, getting kids to and from school, buses will have to run. We used to get out for summer because it was just too hot in a school. They didn't have air conditioning, so you could heat it by the old steam heat, but you could not get a classroom cool enough.
I thought it was for farming also.
And for farming also. And of course, most of our kids don't live on the farm anymore. So it would help us in our grades. When we're trying to improve kids' grades, we have more time with them, but we're not boring them to death. Our kids today are bored to death. That's too long. If you said, and a minister goes over an hour in their sermon, you as an adult are screaming bloody murder. I can't take it anymore. So why are we doing this to young kids, putting them into an education environment? Let them know that they're out, they got all afternoon off. And they can go to work, you can have athletics after school, you can go to tutoring, and encouraging tutoring services for individuals. For instance, if you have a teacher that's excellent in algebra, that they can go one-on-one with that kid, and the teacher can make more money of which to do that. So I think that would be the best education reform that we could go through in the state of Oklahoma, is to year-round school. You get off the month of July, but you're going back to an air-conditioned building, but you shorten the day, and therefore kids would not be as bored with the day, and they look forward to going back. If one of the things I learned as a tennis coach is you do not go over 90 minutes. If you're going over 90 minutes, your kids are not going to come back. But when they say, well, coach, can we go longer? You can go out and hit as long as you want to, but tennis practice is over after 90 minutes. If you want to go out and hit on your own, fine. If you want to go home, fine. But once you go over 90 minutes, and that's even in tennis when you're moving around and you're, right. But you don't want a coach over you.
Yeah.
You want to be on your own for some period of time. That doesn't mean that student may come back and say, coach, I'm still having a little bit of problem with my forehand or my backhand. Can you help me on a one-on-one? But what they do after 90 minutes is on their own. And all my tennis players say, we didn't go over 90 minutes. So I'd appreciate your vote on June 18th.